Let's talk tourism.
Richard Bexon hails from England originally, but has lived in Costa Rica for, geez, what, Rich? Over 15 years.
17 years now, yeah.
17. He began his career in travel sales, but has recently branched out into tourism and investment consulting services. He hosts a super popular podcast on these topics and has his finger on the pulse of that magical place where tourism meets real estate. I have worked with Richard as a collaborator, friend, and business partner for the better part of 2 decades, sucking down hundreds of beers along the way, I might add. Rich, let's talk tourism.
Let's do it.
So on my very specific hyper niche podcasts, some folks might be wondering why I'm having somebody on who's in real estate. But I think you and I have long had this discussion. The world of tourism and real estate seems to be worlds apart in terms of the humans who inhabit them. But to anybody observing, these things are obviously related. What do you think it is that tourism doesn't get about real estate and real estate doesn't get about tourism?
It's a great question, Case. I think that you and I, during our years, have kind of seen the two things kind of merge, but I don't think the industries have really merged. And it's conversations that we've had with, hoteliers and also people in real estate. I think tourism really understands client service, what people want, the experience case. They understand room layouts, spacing, size, flow, and building something that's going to have continual use. Because again, their business is basically they have real estate that people are using constantly and they're delivering experience. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think they really understands where to build, meaning they're always going to look for that area that's in high demand. They can see stuff probably before tourism does, even though sometimes tourism comes first. But I think that they can really understand is where to build. Because again, real estate's not going to be built or developed, in an area where, there isn't demand. So the two need to be together because that they do work together. I mean, Case, how many times have we seen tourism areas that are developed first from tourism? Like Tamarindo was a tourist destination that then real estate came. There aren't that many destinations where it's been real estate and then tourism came.
Yeah, kind of the old joke. I think the key word that I picked up on you just said is experience, right? Where a lot of folks, I had my little time in Panama in real estate, and whenever you're showing people an up and coming area, the first thing they're trying to imagine is, well, what would I do here? Right.
Yep.
And I guess that's the word experience, right? So tourism is all about curating these experiences. Back to Panama for a second. I love my silly little marketing slogans. And Panama was always more obsessed with the real estate side of tourism, the bricks and mortar, the square feet, the gold faucets. So when, trying to kind of bring people around more to the Costa Rica experiential way of thinking, it's like, well, people are buying the stories, not the square feet. How does real estate need to get better at selling the stories that maybe we've been great at in tourism, but probably tourism needs to get a little bit better about like the dollars and cents of the square feet, right? Like if you could have them swap brains, what would you have the real estate guys teach the tourism guys and vice versa?
That's a great question. I mean, the tourism side, easy case is room layouts. I mean, the amount of time that I'm working with a lot of people building at the moment because, Costa Rica, in 06, 07 went on a huge, 05, 06, 07 expanded drastically. It was building. I think the whole world was. Right. 08, of course, it happened. Then it just was really kind of somewhat stagnant for 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It started to pick up again, but, I think, tourism looks at something, and this is where I always say to people when they're looking to build, and this is why I say it is because there is not tons of product out there that people are looking to build now. Yeah. And when they're looking to build, I always say to them, make every single room the same. And they're like, what? And I'm like, make every single room like a hotel room, have a king bed, night tables, have double vanities. Why? Because I don't know whether you've ever traveled Case before where you've been paying with multiple couples and you get there and you get the crummy room. Yeah. Nobody wants to be paying the same amount for the crummy room.
Yeah, it's always a drag.
So make the rooms all the same, but also is, the one thing I'll say about real estate is they make great outdoor space as well. They make a great use of the outdoor space that, Costa Rica is about Costa Rica is about spending time outside. So while the room may be great, the outside needs to be fantastic as well. And a lot of outside dining, the pool needs to be amazing. And we're kind of starting to see that real high class money starting to come into Costa Rica and some amazing stuff being built. But I think the thing, Case, is the two aren't separate. They're together. If you're building something, you're probably going to end up renting it. But also you've got to think about reselling it as well. I always say to people, think about your exit strategy.
I wonder what percentage of luxury homes in Costa Rica are rented.
I'd say a good chunk, Case. I think a real huge amount.
More than half?
Yeah, I would say more than half.
Back to real estate for a question for a moment. Obviously, like most, I guess, interesting destinations in the world, Costa Rica real estate is on fire right now, right? What do you think all the excitement's about?
Well, I mean, there are two things that I think are fueling it and what the excitement is. Number one, Case, people have an excess of cash. In the US, you can't get the spread that you used to get. You can't buy something at 300,000 and then it turns to 600,000. People are thinking that now they're paying something at 600,000 and maybe they're going to get 657. And what you're getting is nothing. I mean, 600,000 down here in Costa Rica can get you something nice, and get you a beachfront, kind of condo. So I think that's it. But also I think that, and I'll say even for me personally, cases, COVID was a point where you stopped and you really analyzed everything in your life, and I think it really allowed the treadmill to stop and for people to take a hard look at their life and go, okay, what's important to me? I think that having been locked up or in, I suppose locked up for so long, people are like, I'm not doing this. I'm going to a country, where it's open, where people spend time outside, because we may have closed borders for 6 months, but even those 6 months, we were all at the beaches, we were moving around. There weren't that many cases. So no. I think it's multiple things. It's cash. I think people really have that, make a lifestyle investment, as I call it. They're looking to make an investment. If they can get enjoyment out of it, definitely. People are looking for more of that. And especially millennials basically, and people probably in their 40s, they're looking for experiences. And we go back to that experiences. They want experiential investments and these kind of things. An investment in Costa Rica is an experiential investment.
I guess quality of life, change of lifestyle.
You reanalyze it. If you're stuck in a shoebox, apartment in New York, for weeks or months at an end, you go, why am I doing this? I could be, and then also the remote working part of it, Case, has fueled it hugely as well. And then Costa Rica's digital nomad visa, the political situation, around the world as well, people just getting tired and they just want to kind of, they want to come to a country where, the government just doesn't get involved in your stuff as much. Pura
Vida sells, doesn't it?
That's it, man. And I think you and I have discussed Panama for years. Panama was great with real estate. They just forgot the solid foundation of a great experience.
I think Costa Rica does a pretty good job of owning the word authenticity, and unique to most of Latin America. There's also sort of a sense of equality, where local surfer dudes and hedge fund guys rub elbows at the same bar after the surf sesh, and there's not like a giant feeling of resentment or class consciousness. That's really rare, and I think a lot of people really appreciate that. And none of that, you don't feel unsafe, right? Let's go the reverse though. Cold bucket of water time. You're talking to a lot of people. What's the first dose of harsh reality where they were like, oh, I thought I could buy 2 miles of beachfront for $10. What are the biggest mismatches of conceptions, expectation versus reality when it comes to investing in real estate in Costa Rica?
Awesome question, Case, because it's interesting when we start going down that with it. When I talk to a lot of people, whether it be, people trying to, invest in land or people building a big development or building a hotel here, misconceptions, or kind of like the big, bucket of cold water. A lot of people are like, well, I can get 10% returns easy here, and really is, if you're doing it yourself, yes, you can, because a lot of people are looking for, a lifestyle investment, but they also want some return, and that's not easy. Because the reason being is you're going to need a property management company, and they're taking anywhere from 20 to 40% depending on the area. So your profit is basically being taken by the property management company. But a lot of the time, if it pays the bills, people are happy and it appreciates. One of the big things, Case, we don't see big, huge, appreciations. We have seen it, but over the years, Costa Rica is like a steady eddy. It's kind of 2, 3, 4, 5% increases every year. It's steady. Why? Because if you're not from Costa Rica, you can't get finance unless it's owner financed, and that's a big thing here. Mm-hmm. I actually think it's good because again, it allows a more steady and sustainable, development here in Costa Rica. But then that also means that your demand is not so much. So of course it doesn't see those, it doesn't see what you've seen in the US where, you buy something for 300,000, 6 months later, it's worth 500, 600,000.
Asset bubbles. Yeah. And even for locals or residents, it's not like loans are cheap, yep. Right? I mean, what's a typical home loan in Costa Rica look like?
7.5%, 8% over 20, 30 years.
Yeah. A fixed rate or variable rate?
Usually they'll do fixed for the first 3 to 5 years, and then it becomes variable after there. And, I was talking to my wife about it the other day. That I was like, wow, if you had a variable mortgage going into where we're going to at the moment, I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm sure it's not the 80s, 70s and 80s where we saw, teens inflation. But, if you've got something in the local currency, they're in the teens on that stuff.
Yeah, it's called defaults or being upside down on your loan.
So
when customers are asking, so obviously there's customer misconceptions, or maybe they read something that's 15 years out of date. But on the other end, in these people who are, I'm assuming most of the people who are contacting you are coming from first world economies with really developed real estate. When they come down here, what's the product that's clearly missing? What are they asking for? They're like, oh, well, I'll just go buy an X. And you're like, no, we don't have that.
I think we have it one way or another, but sometimes it's just condos, Case. We just don't have enough condos, because a lot of the time condos are in buildings, and to build here, there is, which is a good thing. There is such environmental restrictions that it's difficult to build, high-rise condos, and we don't do that here. But also is, or beachfront. You'd mentioned it there, what's the big misconception, but also that's missing, beachfront stuff. Why? Because if you're a foreigner, theoretically, you can only have a concession. You can't own it. There's like 2% of beachfront land in Costa Rica that's titled. That's Junquial, Flamingo, and there's some other areas in Costa Rica that are. But 98% of the, the first 200 meters back from high tide is a concession. That means you kind of rent it. You don't own it, from the government. People don't understand that. Because everything is public here. It belongs to the people, which I think is great.
Right.
25% of the country's national parks, the beaches are not private, meaning that even if you bought everything around it, someone could still drive up on a boat and get on your beach, and there's nothing you can do because you do not own that beach, nor the first 200 meters, which I think is right because, again, when you go out on a boat and you look back, it's beautiful. It's not high rise after high rise. There are areas that are like that, where there are, condos kind of on the beach, but they're still set back a little bit. But that's probably what's missing, Case. That, and also what's missing at the moment is more kind of affordable homes in the 250 to kind of 350 mark. There's just not much there at the moment. People are building, mainly, the higher end of that, because again, a lot of people here are cash buyers. Right. So typically people have the cash to buy, are very affluent anyway, so they're buying something big. Like I had someone the other day was like, Rich, are you really going to build 6 villas, for 5 million? And I'm like, it's not going to cost 5 to build it, dude. It's going to cost about $3.6 to $4 million max. And he's like, wow, in California, $5 million doesn't even get you anything on the beach. And I'm like, these are different worlds.
True. Speaking of construction, when people are asking you what's typical per square meter or per square foot, if you can do the math, what's it cost here to build?
I usually say, go ahead. Sorry, Case.
No, I was just going to say, like, what's good quality and what's great quality? What can someone expect?
Good quality is like $140, $150, $140, $150 a square foot. Good. And I think high end, you're looking at $200 to $250. But you're looking high end stuff at the $200, $250 a square foot.
For our metric brethren, how does that translate into per meter costs?
Per meter, I'd say good $1,500, $1,600, and then high end is $2,000 and above.
Okay.
So, the prices haven't increased hugely here as much as they have. As you know, Case, I got some friends that have construction companies here. So I watch the cost of construction and, we've seen it increase by like 15%, at some points 20, but Costa Rica creates its own cement. A lot of the wood is from here as well. The only thing that they import is really the rebar, and everything else is here in Costa Rica.
So builders are not reporting crazy changes in cost to build.
Not huge. That being said, Case, I think it's about to start to hit the market though here.
And what about in any supply chain issues?
Not hugely. There was a bit on the rebar front, but that seems to be solved. And the rest of it is, I think kind of again, a lot of the stuff is produced here, or it's produced in South Central America. So it's, the supply chains are really there. It's not tons coming from China. So
talking about gaps in the marketplace, if you were to advise a would-be developer tomorrow who wanted to spend $20 or $30 million, whether in a tourism or residential project, or Jesus, it could even be an industrial project. Where are you seeing obvious opportunities if you're comfortable disclosing?
No, not at all. I mean, I always say on the podcast, Case, it's, I'd always mention Playa Grande, Negra, Avellanas, those areas, just because, all the other areas are pretty I say built up, but they're nothing compared to Mexico, Hawaii. But,
sure.
But I mean that you can get very close to the beach or on the beach there.
You're basically talking Guanacaste region, south of Tamarindo.
Correct. That would be Negra and Avellanas, Junquial, between Nosara, north of Nosara and south of Tamarindo, or Hacienda Penida, all of that area. Or, there's one beach, there's beaches of Bahia de Piratas, Playa Grande, those areas. Grande has, it's a national park, so they can't build anything there, and mangrove, so it's protected. If you're looking for something a little bit more chilled, that's a great area with
Did I lose you? Hello.
Also, the southern areas, Case of like Dominical, Uvita, Ojachao, Tres Rios, those areas are seeing huge amounts of growth.
And what would you advise someone to build? How do you do something different? What are customers asking for? Where is their demand that's clearly not being met?
Well, I think in the market, there's demand for vacation rentals with hotel amenities, Case. So if anyone's going to build anything, make sure it's got a kind of boutique hotel, 20, 30 rooms on it. The reason being is, and then build real estate around it. Now, what's the real estate to build? I'd be looking at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bedroom properties, Case. I'd have some entry, units at, 300 to 400,000. And then I'd have some higher end stuff at like the $1 million mark. And I may even look at kind of more fractional ownership of some of those larger ones as well. So that if someone's looking for a $1 million property, but doesn't want, and they want to put in 250, they can do, because again, you get 4 people at 250,000 and you've got your $1 million mark, and you're not going to be in it a quarter of the year anyway. So share some of the expense, kind of, I suppose, Uber style that people are doing right now, with someone.
Can foreigners access local credit? Are there lenders?
There are private lenders, Case, but again, they're going to be looking at the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% mark.
Those are Shylock numbers.
Yeah, it'd be better, Case, to remortgage your home back in the US or take out a loan in the US and do it down here. Or sometimes I sometimes suggest cases like, look, if you're doing that, maybe this is not the move for you, and I just try and give people, I'm really honest with people. I say I'm a sucker for giving honesty and helping people. I had a client where I was just like, look, I'm getting the sense that this isn't really for you. And they were like, well, why do you say that, Rich? I'm like, well, you've got a place up in New Jersey on the North Shore, which appears to do 12%. Why are you going to sell that and take that down here?
Right.
And make 3 to 5 why would you not just take the returns from that and use it to vacation here in Costa Rica? They ended up not buying, but I kind of, if I'd have been a realtor, Case, I'd have sold them something.
You're like that Santa Claus in Miracle on 34th Street.
Yes, exactly. I just want to give people all the information and also my opinion. And I always say that it's my opinion and it's biased. And if I don't know something, I'm going to tell them, I don't know. They'll hear from me. I don't know, but I'll find that for you.
On that topic, what are the big frustrations and headaches that you're seeing from would-be investors or new investors or people who've already purchased? I mean, what are the problems you're trying to help them solve?
Well, new one, Case, is just finding their tribe. I say call it finding their tribe, which is really the area that they're looking for, and sometimes I'm like with people like, we're gonna have to meet 3 or 4 times for me to really get an idea of like, what are you looking for? What are the experiences? What do you want? And the question I like to ask is, what don't you? And then from that, I'm to be able to go, look, these are the areas, that would suit you, so that they can actually come down and see those areas. Because otherwise you're putting a pin in a map if you've not been here before. Even if you have, this country's coastline is so vast. I drove the other day from like Central Pacific to the north of Guanacaste. It took me 6 hours to drive that, and it was like 200 kilometers for 6 hours. Costa Rica takes a long time to get around. So that's kind of like for new kind of investors, it's just really getting the lay of the land here, and I can usually speed that very quickly up to people, and show them stuff in all these different areas, because realtors are usually area specific.
Yeah.
So if you're in, I don't know, looking at Flamingo area and you're also looking in Masada, they're not the same realtor. No. Or you're looking in Santa Teresa, that's a different realtor, or Jaco, it's a different one, or Mount Antonio or San Jose, they're all different realtors. It's all very area specific. And there are tons of them. I mean, anyone can become a realtor here, and sometimes like, Rich, are you a realtor? And I'm like, no, because like, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to help you get, and give you advice on what it is that you're looking at. And I'll call BS on stuff if I hear it, and I often hear, BS.
Give me a good one. Give me a good singer. You don't have to name names.
No. I mean, again, I'll just give you one at the moment. I just had an offer accepted today, and they were a little annoyed because the realtor was like, yeah, I bought the property behind this, And then she also said, I'm closing on a property behind. And I was like, this just doesn't sound right. So I went around and knocked on that person's door and knocked at it. And they were like, yeah, it made me an offer, but like, we haven't signed anything yet. And I'm like, that's your view that you're going to get from your home, just so that you're aware,
Right.
So, it's kind of that kind of stuff. Or the, hey, I want to know, the Ritz-Carlton's going in over there. And, it's just like,
that's the old classic.
Until it's happening, I don't believe anything in Costa Rica.
Yeah, that was always the classic, right? Of Oscar de la Hoya bought there in it last week.
Yep.
You've been driving. I'm sorry.
So the other thing I'd say, the pace of business is usually frustrates people. Just doesn't happen as quickly. There's no MLS. It's very disorganized. I always suggest to people, if you're going to buy something here, separate concerns, separate your realtor from your lawyer, from your escrow company. And I hold people's hand a lot through that process, just to make sure that, there is cross-checking and kind of an audit process between them.
So let's talk about that for a second. What do you think are the rookie mistakes? A lot of people, when, they sort of have, I think it's called Paris syndrome, right? Where you go somewhere new and you're like, oh, everything here is perfect and amazing. Or you're shocked that it's not perfect and amazing. Some people sort of lose their minds and not realizing, like, one of the great things about Costa Rica is it's not very litigious. One of the downsides of Costa Rica is that makes it basically buyer beware. People will fib, right?
Yeah.
So on that notion of separating concerns, of making sure that you choose your lawyer, not necessarily the realtor's lawyer, what are these sort of rookie mistakes you're seeing people make?
Well, I mean, that's one, number one is kind of maybe just listening to the realtor a little bit too much on the price to offer, because again, the realtor is working typically for the seller as well as the listing agent. So just be aware of that. So when you go in with your offer, make the offer that you think is best. There'll always be somewhere in the middle. You'll meet in the middle somewhere. That's one. Again, never work with a realtor that's also a lawyer as well, that's going to do the transfer for you. I've seen way too much stuff of that case, and no offense to any lawyers or dealers that are realtors, like, just either be one or the other. But my advice is, don't touch that. The reason being is because, again, then if your realtor is doing the transfer of the deed, he's also getting the commission. Like, it's too, incestuous, if that's the word, that. And also is, don't use the lawyer's escrow either. Again, they might be lawyers, but still, just separate concerns and do a really deep due diligence. I mean, there are home inspections here, Case, and there are home inspections. There are home inspections that cost $600, where maybe someone that's not registered that kind of looks at homes will go around and take pictures and say this needs fixing or that. And then there is a deep inspection, which is what I always suggest to people to do when they're buying a home or a condo, is mechanical, structural, and electrical engineers to come in. It costs anywhere from $1,300 to $1,800. but like they'll check the roof, they'll the roof, the purling on the roof, the zinc, they'll take a look at all the electrics, and a home inspector doesn't have that knowledge, and if you're gonna invest, a couple of $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million, like spend the money up front. And I think that sometimes maybe they don't want to spend the money up front because they think that it's an expense. Whereas look, when you look at it, it could be 0.25% of the overall price. But if it's wrong, I spoke to a friend the other day, some woman lost $800,000 on a deal case because the realtor was the lawyer and also the escrow agent, and that'll probably get sorted. But there just needs to be oversight, if that makes sense.
Checks, balances, moral hazard. Don't assume that business law here is business law where you're from.
Trust, but verify.
Yeah, good point. You've been driving all over the country lately, talking to all sorts of people in various roles in the world of real estate, construction, etc. Has anything really surprised you or blown your hair back? Where you're like, wow, I didn't know that or didn't expect that?
People buying sight unseen.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I would never let anyone do that. If anyone ever contacted me and was like, hey, Rich, can you help me find something and buy sight unseen? I'm like, I'm sorry. I'll find it for you. I had a client once who was like, hey, can you find me a farm around the Arenal Lake area? And I found in the farm and he was like, great, let's do the deal. And I'm like, no, dude, I need you to come down and see this.
Yeah.
And I need you to walk you around and there's a river on it. It has a 50-meter setback. There's no water on it at the moment, but you can get a concession from the well. That's going to take X period of time. There's that kind of stuff.
Weird.
People buying land with no water case, or people either buying land with no water or buying water that say that it has water, but it's not a concession. It's not registered well, or it's not registered water. The reason being is if you don't have water that's registered in this country, you can't get a construction permit. They changed that 2 years ago. So never buy anything that doesn't have legal water on it.
Yeah, that's probably the number one rule, right? You need water permits.
Well, yes, you need the water permits in order to get construction. Or if you're going to buy the land, at least know that there is a huge risk with this. I just structured a deal for some big investors, some famous investors, where they were about to buy the land. And I said, no, guys, we'll structure it that you don't close until we have well permits. We've drilled, tested to quality and quantity in order to make sure that you can build your wellness center here, on a perforated well. But they were ready to buy, that land, basically with no water. It's cattle land. You won't get, So I just structured the deal so that we don't close. We put money in escrow until we get, basically X, Y, and Z. We figure out whether we've got it or not. If we don't get it, we pull back. We've only spent $20,000 on the well. But the owner of the land, I was like, this doesn't work out. You now got basically a registered well on your property. You can go and resell that. Maybe they can't do a wellness center, but maybe they could put a couple of villas on it. So it's finding that win-win situation sometimes.
Back to tourism for a second.
Yep.
I think a lot of people in private equity expected to swoop in and buy a bunch of tourism properties for cents on the dollar in the crisis. Doesn't seem like it worked out that way.
No.
Why?
I'm going to say some of it, Case, is the local market. It's the reaction of the market to basically let go of their staff and reduce costs, quickly. The banks basically were allowed kind of an 18-month kind of parlay on payments. They were basically deferral. And also the local market. I think that we were very surprised at how strong the local market is and how much money that they have. Typically, we don't see that much in Costa Rica because those people are typically going to North America, to Europe. They're leaving. You don't see them here. So people were willing to pay $300, $500, $700 a night here in the local market, but that's because, and I don't think people understand this, is there is a strong middle and upper class here in Costa Rica. Yes, the average wage might be $800 a month, but there are a lot of people making $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on their own, and with a home, with another, in a household, they may be making more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So, all of this land and these developments that we have here someone used to own them beforehand. So that money, when people came in and bought, has trickled down, and there are smart people here.
Yeah. Another kind of funny thing about Costa Rica, again, positive or negative, is bankruptcy law here is incredibly efficient.
Correct.
Final question.
Shoot.
And then we can just sort of gab on whatever you want to gab about. What do you think is the most overrated and underrated investment location in Costa Rica?
Wow, that's a great question. Okay, underrated as an investment case, I think Arenal, La Fortuna Arenal, doesn't have vacation rentals, has hotels, no vacation rentals. I was talking to like basically one of the most like prestigious luxury resorts there about doing a real estate piece there. And I think they'll end up doing it. But like that's an area that receives a huge amount. I mean, 60% of our clients' case in the travel company, go to Arenal. It's a huge amount of people. Everyone goes Arenal Beach.
And a lot of families.
Correct. That, and then also, I'm a sucker because, I just bought land in San Gerardo de Ota, which, I'm a sucker for those highland areas because if people are going to go south, the Arenal south is a really long drive. That's like 5 hours.
Yeah.
So is there a way that they can get some of that experience in a southern area and then, in an hour be at the beaches? So more of those kind of rural destinations.
And where do you think is maybe played out, saturated, overrated, or maybe the price to value doesn't quite work?
Nosara and Santa Teresa.
You think,
those areas have
jump shark?
Yeah, I think a construction moratorium is coming their case just because from water. I don't know whether they're going to continue to give water letters in order to build, just because it's just been an excess of building there. Everyone's drunk in areas, and I mean I can't say to people, and depending on what they're doing, is that like it's going to be, you're going to have that spread, over basically, fine, the equity play that you're going to have there. It's just, I believe stuff is overpriced in those areas.
Those are places that are both a lot of fun to visit, but I don't know if they'd be fun places to live.
I mean, Santa Teresa just has dusty roads. It's great to visit. It is great to visit. But they have traffic, it's dusty roads, there's no infrastructure really there. Nosara has a little bit of that, but like it can get, again, there's dusty once you get off the main road there. There's just not much planning.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So it's like the hype and the interest, the infrastructure has not caught up.
Correct. And I don't think it may never catch up, Case. It just, again, the local municipalities don't have tons of money, so I'm not too sure. Maybe they will, maybe it won't. I mean, they got the road paved through Nosara, but it took like 7-8 years to get done. I don't know when Corbin to Santa Teresa is going to get done, but, if I would be looking at those areas, I'd be looking, north at maybe Manzanillo area and south at Cabuya from the Santa Teresa Malpais. And if I'd looking at Nosara, I'd be looking at Gaza or Junquial, kind of more to the north area, Lagarto, Negra, so there's still, I still think there's a play in Tamarindo, just because, again, as I say to people, is when they're looking to build, the cost to construct is the same anywhere in Costa Rica, really. Maybe a little cheaper in, the highland areas, but it's going to cost you the same really to construct. So spend the money on the location, because location always works. Buy the location,
Any final tips to anybody who's thinking about investing in Costa Rica?
I'd say just don't be in a rush. Not going to go nuts here. Take your time, don't get caught up, and get some allies, get some people in your own corner, and just understand that, I love realtors. They're great people, but just understand is that like, they're there to sell properties and make commissions. And yes, they are nice people, but like their interests are not for you. It's selling the property. And I think there are some that won't let you buy something if it's not right for you, but again, it's unregulated here.
Right. I've always wondered, who does the realtor represent, the buyer or the seller?
I don't know, Case.
Mercenaries. We love you, realtors. Got some good realtor friends.
We do. There are some good realtors. There are some very good realtors out there. They're full of knowledge. It's just nice, especially if you've not been to Costa Rica before, you've only been once, to just have someone in your corner. And just understand that if you're looking to buy something, go around, talk to the neighbors, the pros and cons. Don't be like, what don't you like? Just say, what are the challenges? If you could go back and do it again, what would you do differently? Like, ask the questions, don't ask the direct question. And especially with local I love to speak to construction workers because they give you really the ins and outs of what's happening. There was a property the other day that had a creek running down the back. And I said to one of the construction guys, I'm like, does that ever like, do you ever get floods here? He's like, yeah, last year we had floods. And I said to the guys, I'm like, let's move on, guys.
Yeah, next.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas nobody would have said anything.
Well, Richard, it has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I'll finish with a quote from one of my favorite uncles. You can either get good advice or you can get free advice. So if you're coming to Costa Rica, you should probably get advice from old Richard Bexon before you go slapping $1 million down on your dream bed and breakfast investment. Thanks so much for chatting with me, Rich. Let's do it again soon.
Sounds good, buddy. Thanks very much.
Ciao.
Let's talk tourism.